So my name is Randy Anderson, and I'm the president of the Chautauqua Sports Hall of Fame. The mission of our organization is to honor and preserve the sports history of Chautauqua County. Maybe 2 years ago, I was invited down to the town of Carroll in Shrewsbury to give a talk about Lloyd Moore, another race car driver. And again, it was a room about this size, and it was full of people. And they were all his relatives. And I go, why am I standing up here? You guys know the story better than I do. Why don't you guys just get up and I'll sit down? Well, I'm kind of feeling that way here tonight, too. So anyway, a representative of the Moore family stood up in the back. He says, "We're just here to make sure you get it right." So, a little bit of nerves up here tonight. We're trying to get this right on Bill Rexford. By almost any measure, Bill Rexford is the least known and most underappreciated and underrated of all NASCAR champions. He's the only eligible champion never nominated for NASCAR's Hall of Fame. And the only champion ignored when the sanctioning body recognized its 75 greatest drivers of all time during its 75th anniversary season this year. If you mention Bill Rexford's name along pit road or in the garages on any race weekend, you'll receive a lot of blank stares and shrugged shoulders. There's no asterisk by Bill Rexford's name. He was a champion. The entry simply lists him as the 1950 NASCAR champion, winning the title by 111 points over Fireball Roberts and 369 points more than Lee Petty. Fireball Roberts, Lee Petty, they're in NASCAR's Hall of Fame, but not Bill. Ironically, Bill's racing resume in NASCAR is very similar to that of Red Byron, who was the 1949 champion, the year before Bill. Red Byron only made 15 NASCAR starts. Bill made 36. Red Byron won 2 poles and 2 races. Bill won 1 pole and 1 race. Not much of a difference. Red Byron finished in the top 5 8 times. Bill had 8 top 5s. Same. Red Byron finished in the top 10 9 times. Bill finished in the top 10 17 times. Red Byron was a World War II veteran. Rexford was a World War II veteran. Red Byron's in the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Bill Rexford is not. When Jeff Gordon won his first NASCAR championship in 1995, much attention was focused on his young age. Jeff Gordon was 24 years and 100 days old, a young man. However, the youngest champion in the history of NASCAR was Chautauqua County native Bill Rexford. who was 23 years old and 229 days of age when he won the title. He will be the youngest champion of all time, I'm confident. William J. Rexford was born on March 14th, 1927 in Conewago Valley. He was the only child of Kermit and Edith France Rexford. His father, Kermit, owned a small Chevrolet sub-dealership in the community. Young Bill grew interested in cars as he helped around his dad's garage. At the age of 16, his passion for cars led him to attempt jalopy racing at the Pennyroyal racetrack, a half-mile dirt oval in nearby Leon, New York. More about Pennyroyal later, a lot later, when the expert on all things Pennyroyal racetrack, Fred Milliman, will come up here and answer all your questions. Once again, here's Randy, here's Fred. Bill's fledgling racing career was put on hold when he joined the Navy. He served as a control tower operator in Rhode Island. Following his discharge in '46, Bill resumed jalopy racing at local bull rings. Although his cars were crude and prize money minimal or non-existent, Rexford loved the fun and the excitement of the sport. In late summer of 1949, while attending a party, Bill liked parties, he heard that Jamestown used car owner Julian Busick, used car dealer Julian Busick, had entered a car in the NASCAR sanctioned race at the 1-mile dirt track at Langhorne, Pennsylvania. And he was looking for a driver. Bill, never bashful, approached Rexford and said, "I'm your guy. I can drive your car." And a deal was struck between Julian and Bill. So on September 11th, 1949, Rexford drove Julian's 1949 Ford, number 59, from the 23rd starting spot in a field of 45 entries. A lot of cars. So he started 23rd and finished 14th. First race.
Wow.
Yeah, right. Bill completed 177 laps, 13 laps in arrears to the winner, Curtis Turner of Roanoke, Virginia. Although Turner and his car owner, Hubert Westmoreland, were rewarded handsomely with a prize money of $2,250, which was a lot of dough back in 1949. Bill and Julian Busick, brought home $50. Finished 14th, got $50. A week later, they raced again, this time at Hamburg, New York, just up the road from here. Rexford again was at the wheel of Busick's 49 Ford in a race that was witnessed by nearly 12,000 spectators in Hamburg. Bill brought his car home in 5th place.
Wow.
This time he earned $175. Now that was pretty good money. For his next scheduled race at Heidelberg Speedway near Pittsburgh, Bill again was driving a Busing car, but Busing doubled his efforts by entering both Bill and Lloyd Moore from Frewsburg. Moore and Rexford were friendly rivals from their days at Pennyroyal, right, Fred?
Yes.
Absolutely. In fact, Bill had stopped by Lloyd's house to borrow a helmet so that he could have it for the race in Heidelberg. And that's how Bill and Lloyd and Julian all got together. The two-car effort paid dividends for Busing. Rexford finished third. 7 laps down, but that's how racing was back then. They didn't have all these competition yellows to tighten up the field and all that malarkey that's going on in NASCAR nowadays. Meanwhile, Moore finished 6th. Bill won $400. Lloyd won $150. The winner of the race was Lee Petty, Randleman, North Carolina, $1,500. Now, funny story that Lloyd Moore told me. I was fortunate enough to know Lloyd, did not know Bill, but I did know Lloyd, and Lloyd said in that first race that he raced at Heidelberg, I told you he finished 6th. He said the person who finished 5th was a girl. Sarah Christian. He said, I had a hard time showing up to work on Monday. He said, everybody razzed him about getting beat by a girl. 1949 was the first year of existence for the newly formed NASCAR organization. In total, the Bill France-led organization sanctioned 8 events, with Red Byron of Atlanta, Georgia, driving a 49 Olds 88, owned by Raymond Parks, being declared the first national champion. Despite only racing in 3 races that year, Bill ended up in 12th place in the final points for 1949. The next year, Busing continued his 2-car team of Rexford and Moore on the expanding NASCAR circuit. Bill competed in 17 of the 19 scheduled races that year. He recorded 1 win, 5 top 5 finishes, and 11 top 10s in 17 races. Bill's lone victory came in the Poor Man's 500 at Canfield, Ohio. The race was called the Poor Man's 500 because it was held on the same day, May 30th, as another more notable race, the Indy 500. Thank you, you got it, the Indy 500. So Bill drove a 1950 Oldsmobile. He took the lead from Curtis Turner on the 121st lap and led the remaining 80 circuits to win by 2 laps. He won second place with Glenn Dunaway, and his teammate Lloyd Moore was third. Bill earned $1,000 in prize money plus $400 in lap money. The first time lap money had ever been offered at a NASCAR race. Bill's other top finishes in 1950 were a 5th at Rochester, a 4th at Hillsborough, North Carolina, a 3rd at Winchester, Indiana, and the 4th in the first ever Darlington 500. The Southern 500 Darlington. So let's take a look at the car that Bill was using. This is at Darlington in 1950. Notice all the tape on the hood, up on the roof, around the headlights. Why was all that tape on the car? So the dust, the dirt, the marbles, the rocks, whatever, would knock the paint off the front of the car. Now, why did that matter? Well, for good reason. These cars that Bill and Lloyd were racing, they drove those cars to the racetrack. They didn't have a trailer, they didn't have a transporter, they didn't have an enclosed hauler. They drove those cars from Julian's used car lot on Flavanna Avenue in Jamestown to wherever the race was, and drove them back home again. Lloyd told me some of the best races that he was ever in was going to and from the racetrack, racing Bill. Bill didn't want to lose. Lloyd didn't want to lose. Some of the best races were getting to and from the racetrack. So, they get the cars back home, peel the tape off. That baby's sitting on the front row on Monday morning at Julian Busey's car lot with a sign that allegedly said, "Only driven on Sundays." Those were stock cars. Bill's average finishing position of 11th, with just 3 did not finishes, were good enough to make him the 1950 NASCAR champion, edging out Fireball Roberts and Lee Petty for the honor. His teammate Lloyd Moore finished 4th that year. So, to the left is NASCAR President Bill France. Bill is in the middle, and this is Fireball Roberts. Now think what those guys, Bill, Lloyd, and Julian, just accomplished. 3 guys from Western New York, traveling down south and all over the place, taking on the big guys, so to speak, the well-funded teams. And they finished 1st and 5th in points in 1950. That may be some of the reasons that Bill has not received the recognition in the NASCAR Hall of Fame that he so richly deserves. Bill, Julian, and Lloyd were Yankees. They were Yankees. Those Southern boys didn't appreciate those Yankees coming down and taking their money and winning the championships. That's just a theory that I have, and other people may have that theory as well. There might be some validity to it. I compared Bill to Red Byron at the beginning of the speech. Well, Red Byron was from Atlanta, Georgia. I think it mattered. As 1950 champion, Bill received $2,000 cash, a Bulova watch, and a 1951 Nash convertible. As agreed upon in their deal between Julian and Bill, Bill split the money. He split the $2,000 with Julian. However, a dispute arose between Bill and Julian about that car. Julian was a used car dealer. Julian thought Bill should have the car, but he ought to be paying Julian half the value of that car. That's the deal. We're splitting everything. Bill thought, well, we split the money, but that car was given to me, like the watch, and I'm keeping it. Bill ultimately traded that car off for a hardtop Nash that he raced on some quarter-mile tracks. But that disagreement over that car led to the demise of the Rexford-Busing relationship. The following year, 1951, Busing promoted Lloyd to the #1 driver on his team. The year before, Bill had been the #1 driver. Now, Lloyd's the #1 driver. Busing entered Lloyd in 22 races that year. He also hired 7 other drivers to drive in 24 other events. Meanwhile, Julian gave Bill just 5 rides that year. So you can see what I'm talking about, that there was a serious dispute going on between Bill and Julian. Although Bill did put Julian's Oldsmobile on the pole for the 2nd annual Poor Man's 500 in Canfield, Bill lost control of the car on the 115th lap and catapulted over the guardrail, landing in a ditch, demolishing the car, and Bill received injuries to his chest. He struggled for the remainder of the year, recording just 1 top 10 finish. The Busing-Rexford relationship continued to sour in 1952 as Julian gave Bill just 2 starts. He finished 8th and 14th in his 2 starts. Meanwhile, Moore got 14 starts in Busing's other car. In this picture, you can see Bill. He's on the outside up here. He's battling Tim Flock. That's Bill up here in the number 60 car on the outside of that picture. In 1953, again, Julian gave Bill just 2 starts. Although Bill did pretty well in those 2 starts, finishing 5th at Rochester and 10th at Langhorne. 1953 also marked the debut of a brand new sanctioning body called MARC, M-A-R-C, which stood for Midwest Association for Race Cars. MARC was organized by a former NASCAR official named John Markham. It was headquartered in Toledo, Ohio. MARC offered new racing opportunities for drivers, including Bill. Bill drove a car that was co-owned by Bob Deuel from Frewsburg, New York, in the new circuits races. Although complete historical records from 1953 are lacking for MARC, we do know that Bill drove to a 5th place finish in Akron, Ohio, and Canfield, Ohio. He finished the season in 6th place in the championship point tally behind Jim Romine from Youngstown, Ohio. Bill's participation in Mark did not go unnoticed by Bill France and NASCAR. Bill France viewed Mark as a threat to his racing empire. Bill France suspended Bill Rexford from NASCAR competition and fined him $1,000, a penalty that Bill Rexford refused to pay. In that picture is Bill France in the hat, Bill Rexford sitting next to him, and a trophy that Bill won in Canfield, Ohio. This is it right here. It's missing a handle. It's been played with by a lot of children over the years. This trophy was donated to the Chautauqua Sports Hall of Fame by Rusty Busink, who was Julian's nephew. But that is the actual trophy that Bill Rexford won for the 1950 Poor Man's 500 in Canfield, Ohio. For 1954, Bill Rexford moved to Dayton, Ohio, and secured rides from several car owners for the Mark circuit. His best finish was a 4th place result in Dayton, Ohio, and at the end of the season he found himself in 10th position in the season-long points chase. Bill continued to pick up rides on the Mark circuit in 1955. Remember, he was still suspended from NASCAR, and he refused to pay the fine, so he was persona non grata at NASCAR events. We know that in 1955, Bill was racing in at least a half a dozen or more Mark events. He won a race at Dayton, Ohio in April of '55, and another one in Toledo, Ohio in July of that year. At season's end, he was scored in 7th place on the final Mark circuit points chart. In 1956, Bill ran a few more Mark races, including a 4th place finish at Fort Wayne, Indiana, a 5th place finish at Dayton, Ohio, and a 6th place finish at Salem, Indiana. 1956 was Bill's last year behind the wheel of a race car. Bill moved to Parker, Arizona, where he began a small business called BR Trucking. He lived there for 24 years and then moved to Hemet, California, where he lived until his death in 1994 at the young age of 67. Bill is the father of 5 children: William, Brian, and Brenda from his first marriage to Thelma, and Peggy Lee and Dennis from his marriage to Peggy. Bill was inducted into the Friends of Auto Racing Hall of Fame, that's in Buffalo, New York, in 1995, and he was inducted into the Chautauqua Sports Hall of Fame in 1997. But what about the NASCAR Hall of Fame? I'll leave the final word on that subject to Richard Petty. The 7-time NASCAR champion, the winner of 200 races, and a person universally known as the King, of NASCAR. So what did Richard Petty say about Bill Rexford and the NASCAR Hall of Fame? I quote, "I don't care what anybody won. 16 races, one or none. Anybody who wins our championship belongs in our Hall of Fame." Who's going to argue with me?
The second year of NASCAR's new series, then called Strictly Stock, was preparing to open. Car owner Julian Busink walked into a dealership and drove out with the 1950 Oldsmobile that Bill Rexford would drive to one win and the championship. Rexford's record as the youngest Winston Cup champion still stands. Bill Rexford remains the youngest champion in Winston Cup history. Rexford was only 21 when he won the 1950 title. He was known for his consistency. He won only one race, but captured the Stock Car National Championship. In another bizarre turn, it would be the only victory of Rexford's career. The championship came down to the last race, with Rexford beating Fireball Roberts by a slim margin.